All right, thank you. Thank you very much. It's good to be here. My name is Evan Reis, and I'm the Director of Science and Analytics at Safehub. We are a startup company, although we've been around for about 9 years, and we have developed MEMS accelerometer-based instrumentation for buildings, and I'm going to talk a little bit about just the background of our technology, but really want to get into what we're doing currently for the University of California. Some exciting use cases that we are in the middle of or nearly finishing putting together for University of California. So, instrumentation technology has developed over the years from very large elements, components that have gone into buildings that can cost, tens, $50,000, $100,000 to instrument a building. But with the advent of MEMS accelerometer technology, we've been able, and other companies as well, we're not the only one that does this, is to put accelerometers on in a small footprint on a device that's about the size of an iPhone, maybe a little thicker, and connect that to cellular technology to be placed very simply in buildings to provide basic information on shaking intensity wherever they're placed at the ground or upper floors. This technology is, these types of MEMS accelerometers are used ubiquitously throughout the industry. You have something similar on your cell phone, but really to be able to use this technology simply and inexpensively in buildings opens up a whole new set of opportunities for testing and experimentation. And what I'm going to talk about today is post-earthquake damage assessment and even insurance. So to date, Safehub has placed about 1,350 sensors in over 1,000 buildings in 21 countries. Very simple to install. Most of these sensors are self-installed by the user with training. In some cases, we have installed these, but the technology is being used in nearly all countries with very large, potential earthquake risks. And to date, we've recorded over 2,000 earthquakes, and that has come to our platform and be used by clients to assess, the damage to their buildings, or whether they should escalate the situation into getting inspections from engineers. The main process for workflow for the sensor technology is fairly straightforward. There's an earthquake. The sensors, which are sort of always on, always recording, record the data, the acceleration waveforms from the shaking in 3 directions. We ping the USGS constantly to see if there was an actual earthquake, as opposed to somebody, running a mail cart into the wall where the sensor is located, because these are very sensitive. If there was an earthquake, then we request data from the sensor, which is sent to our platform, processed, and then the key element is to deliver alerts to clients, letting them know that there's been an earthquake, that their building, is shaken with a certain intensity and may or may not have structural damage. These are come through the form of emails and text alerts, and they're shown on our web-based platform. Basically, the process for estimating whether there's damage to a building is not much different than the way we would model buildings, right? The sensor provides waveform data, which is converted into a response spectra, and then based on a vulnerability function that is preloaded into the platform based on the building's construction type, its location, its age, its number of stories, that spectral value is compared to that vulnerability function, and an estimate of damage level is obtained. And then that is sent out to the client in the form of, again, a text or email alert. The idea being the initial goal within a few minutes is to give the building owner actionable information on whether they should escalate the situation or evacuate the building or go on with business as usual. The vulnerability functions can be very basic. A lot of folks just have basic COPE information, the occupancy, the fire structural type of a building, its number of stories, its age, and so we can convert that into a HAZUS or global earthquake model type of fragility function. But several clients with engineers either on staff or consulting engineers that you all know have developed custom modeled vulnerability functions for their buildings, and those can be inputted as well. And the idea is then again the vulnerability function compares damage level to some measure of spectral acceleration, and that's what is aligned with the recording from the sensor. These alerts are sent out very quickly, within a couple of minutes typically, since we ping the USGS constantly, and they notify, they make a notification that an earthquake has occurred very quickly. That data is then uploaded to the platform and sent out quickly. We've again had tens of thousands of alerts sent out. 99.9% have been, for relatively small earthquakes where there's been no damage. In some cases, the earthquakes have been large enough where damage was considered possible, and the clients did go out and bring engineers in and inspect the buildings, and it's as intended. The platform, the building owner has access to a platform with more detailed information as well. So a lot of the clients, including University of California, will have a whole suite of buildings, and one of the key issues that they want to understand is, where do we go first? If we have to send a limited number of resources out to look at buildings, which buildings are most likely to have the most damage? So that's visible on a platform, and then more detailed information that we as engineers would be interested in is also available on the platform. So the actual waveform data, response spectra, and these sensors again are triaxial, and in many cases for larger buildings there's multiple sensors placed throughout the building. So structural engineer could, for example, look at the platform for a 1960s era steel frame building that's 20 stories tall, and estimate based on the locations of the sensors where the acceleration would be the highest at the floors by looking at the acceleration outputs, and say, okay, well, that's where we're going to go inspect first, because as you know, one of the biggest challenges after an earthquake will be inspecting buildings, especially older concrete and steel buildings where the joints are hidden, and yet that's where the damage is likely to be. So this kind of information is, sort of in more detail than just a text alert, but it's the kind of information that building owners can use for their engineers, provide to their engineers. We've been very fortunate to have a great relationship with University of California, San Diego, and UC Berkeley, who are currently using our sensors on their testing bed at UC San Diego. This is an example of a 3-story brace frame that they use it on, but they also use it on that recent 10-story wood frame structure where they had sensors over the height of the building, and they were able to just get those recordings, take the information, and use it pretty seamlessly. We are going to be doing some additional testing with the folks at Richmond and Davis Hall and Khalid and everyone against higher fidelity Class A sensors that are used as part of the California Strong Motion Instrumentation program, so we're very excited about that. But overall, we're very pleased that this kind of technology can be used simply without lots of wires and things that have to be hooked up right on the test beds. They can just literally be attached, installed, plugged in. The battery will last for weeks if it's not plugged in, and still record information and provide that to researchers. So we are very excited about a project that we're working on with University of California, and it actually didn't arise out of sort of post-earthquake damage assessment. It arose out of insurance. As you know, California is earthquake country, and University of California has a very healthy earthquake insurance policy. And one of the components of their policy is called a parametric insurance policy. And that's that may not be something you've heard too much about, but your regular insurance policy pays out if there's damage to your house or your car. You go in, you get an estimate for how much the damage was, and then you either get it fixed and then you submit a bill to the insurance company. And it's one thing for your car, but on large buildings, it can take months, even years, to get paid out for that insurance. And a lot of times, clients or owners of buildings would like some of that money up front immediately to take care of immediate repairs, or even to use it for things like, well, at University of California, maybe sending students home, if they have to close a building, or overtime for staff. And so University of California has a multi-million-dollar parametric policy that they want to use sensors for. And so literally just yesterday, we installed the last of 171 sensors in 171 buildings around the 10 UC campuses, plus a couple of the Office of the President buildings all over the state. And these sensors are all placed at the base of the building, and they will be used to trigger payouts for this parametric insurance policy, which, should there be an earthquake, occurs down by UCLA or something like that, the sensors will record the data, compare that to the policy payout, and I'll describe this a little bit more in detail. And University of California will have ready cash within a couple weeks to start effecting repairs or use it for other purposes. Obviously UC has way more than 171 buildings, and so, we had to prioritize where the sensors were placed. They were prioritized primarily to achieve good geographical distribution within a campus, so that all corners of the campus basically are covered, as well as some buildings that are off campus, like the Richmond Field Station. Soil type, making sure that the sensors kind of minimize soil structure interaction where possible. But then also age was a factor, because we know that UC plans to use this information not just for insurance, but also for post-earthquake damage assessment. And so we thought, well, all things being equal, we'd probably rather place it in an older building that might be more vulnerable. And then, of course, accessibility was an issue in some cases, just being able to get into buildings and find facility staff to help us install them. But we're very excited. That was literally just completed yesterday. And just as I was talking to Khalid about this, I think the California Strong Motion Instrumentation Program has about 27 sensors, 27 buildings sensored throughout UC, and so in the space of about 6 months, we've increased that sixfold. This is an example of the types of alerts that UC has been receiving already. There are 62 users from the various campuses, the facilities groups, basically emergency response groups, that are receiving alerts. Literally we've already captured 51 earthquakes just in the past 6 months, ranging from the very large one up here in Northern California to a whole bunch down in Southern and the peninsula. These users can then see a database of their campus that they're associated with, all of the buildings, and the level of damage expected for each building. And of course, to date, we haven't had one, thankfully, that has been large enough to really cause damage, but this is an example of an actual earthquake that occurred actually just 2 weeks ago in Westlake Village, actually not too far from UCLA. And again, this kind of information also produces time histories and response spectra. Should the earthquake have been larger, obviously structural engineers either from the university or hired by the university would come in and look at that information and decide, okay, is this something we should explore in more detail, or where do we go in a building? And so, as I said, though, this was originally started by the desire to put together a parametric insurance program. Safehub is working with Liberty Mutual Reinsurance, which is one of the largest reinsurers in the world, to offer this. And University of California, is the first large organization worldwide to adopt a sensor-based parametric earthquake insurance program. So it's quite exciting. And so again, what parametric insurance offers is this quick payout that is based on the state of nature. Okay, so it is not based it is not based directly on the damage to the building. It is based on the intensity of shaking. So if the spectral acceleration at 0.3 of a second exceeds, a half a G, the payout begins. And if it exceeds, 0.6 G, the payout is 40% of the policy limit. And it just works its way up to 100% of the policy limit. And again, that just allows ready access to cash without a long, laborious claims adjustment process that can, again, really take years. It has taken years in the past, but really happens in a matter of days or weeks. And, not to get into too much detail, but parametric insurance has actually been around for many years. The traditional policy, as I say, is called an indemnity policy, and here you have an event. Somebody comes out and estimates how much damage you have and calculates that, and you get estimates, and that's how much money you get up to your policy limit. So it's very slow, but it's pretty accurate, okay, because somebody's actually out there doing the field measurements, right, and figuring out how much you've lost. Well, parametric insurance trades off some of the what we call basis risk, which is the accuracy with which you're getting how much payout you need, with speed. We just did something called cat in a circle, where you'd have a magnitude and a distance away from that, and that would determine your payout. So it was very fast, but it was incredibly inaccurate based on all the things we know about, magnitude and distance being just two of the factors that affect earthquake damage. The current method that is used most often now is USGS shake map, which sort of balances speed and basis risk, because unless you happen to be very fortunate, there's not a sensor directly at the site where you have a building. And so with the advent of inexpensive sensor technology, now you can get the speed and reduce that uncertainty because you know the shaking directly at the building. So the process, again, is there's an earthquake. It measures the spectral acceleration, and that is compared to a payout table that is established by the policy, and literally within a few weeks, that payout is made directly to the owner. And they can use it for any kind of expenses related to the earthquake. So University of California could, again, hire extra staff, or pay overtime, or send kids home, or have pizza parties. One of the things we're working on now is to improve the granularity of shake maps where there aren't a lot of existing sensors. Obviously, as you can imagine, using a USGS shake map without any sensors leaves a lot of uncertainty. In some locations, of course, in California, you have a lot of sensors, but the more sensors you have, the more granular your estimate of the shaking will be, and that improves the accuracy with which we can estimate things like, regional damage. So we're very excited about that. And then I will leave you, because I really started thinking yesterday, all of these great presentations I have got me thinking. I've been around a long time and seen a lot of changes in earthquake design, but how do we design for buildings? What leads us to change the way we design buildings? It used to be that we would wait for an earthquake, right? There'd be a big earthquake in 1906 or 1933 or 1971 or 1994, and we'd learn from that and we would change our codes. That was obviously took a long time, and it had to have a pretty heavy disaster for us to change anything. And then we had folks like Igor Popov and all the testing that has been done at schools like UC Berkeley and UC San Diego and so many others, where we didn't have to wait for an earthquake to happen. We could go out and actually test elements and see how they would perform under earthquake scenarios. That too is very expensive, of course, though, and required a lot of infrastructure. But from there, and when I started working in the 80s, computer modeling has since, grown from the 80s to today, where we can model the buildings in an office so that we don't have to test everything. And when we model buildings, we can obviously see how they perform. We can change the models. But, it's still kind of one by one. It still takes a long time to build these models. And every time we want to change something, we have to go in and change the model. So that is also a relatively slow process. And then what we heard about yesterday, which was so interesting, was simulation. Now that our computing technology has really taken off, we can simulate hundreds or thousands or millions of scenarios and use machine learning, which, I used to call eyeballing or curve fitting back in my day, but nevertheless, we use machine learning to get more accurate representations of what's going on. But again, we are still limited by that original data set, right? If the data set is small, there's that inherent uncertainty no matter how good our machine learning algorithms are. So I guess what my hope is that maybe we're going to kind of come back around. If instrumentation technology, both by the company that I work for, but others as well, can make sensors in buildings ubiquitous so that every building has a sensor like it has a smoke detector, right? We can start to get more data to inform our computer models and our simulations, and so that they can be the best that can be. So maybe that's the future. We'll see. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I wanted to ask, for your parametric insurance, is it currently tied only to the site observed response, or do you have anything related to like the top story elevation, something like that, the actual building response as well, tied into that?
Right. So it's typically tied to the base response only, because when the models are made initially to set the premium, they are based on stochastic models of the ground shaking at sites. So we want to try and capture that as accurately as possible so that the payout is aligned with the expectations of the model. So really the payout is ground acceleration, the spectral acceleration determined at the ground.
Have you used them to try and capture ambient?
Actually, we have. And I think we actually did it once in a building that Pharrell was in at one point. Yeah, I mean, these sensors are sensitive enough to capture wind-induced vibrations, and so we have looked at ambient vibrations. And that, that's something that can certainly help, we hope, the engineering community, kind of align its modeling more with the true stiffness of a building based on that. So yeah, they're definitely suitable for that kind of work too. All right, thank you.